Overplayed them.
And welcome to the special town council meeting. Excuse me.
Gavel.
I was thinking about the gavel, but all right. Welcome to the May 14th special town council meeting. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Chairperson Phillips.
Present.
Councilor Sims.
Present.
Councilor Wildacross.
Here.
Councilor Pratt.
Present.
Councilor Gagnon.
Present.
Councilor LeBoy.
Present.
Councilor Siegel.
Present.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
before we get to the first item of business, I would ask to be recused as my wife's an employee of the school and I have a financial conflict of interest by the town charter rules.
Okay. You can go and sit in the audience.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No sleep.
No sleep.
Public hearing number 1 on item 2024-5-17. Public hearing on the proposed 2024-25 fiscal year budget for the Gorham School District. Administrator sponsor.
Public hearing number 1 is now open. If anybody would like to speak on this item from the public, please go to the podium and give us your name.
Hi, I'm Nikki Hudson. I live here in Gorham on Villagewood Circle, and I have 2 elementary age kids who are lucky enough to attend school at Village Elementary. I'm here tonight to support the school budget as presented by the school committee and would encourage each of you to vote in favor of the budget you have in front of you. While the budget represents an increase, it provides adequate but not excessive funding for the upcoming year. I recognize that your role as town council members does not give you the ability to determine what is or isn't in the budget. You all have the ability to simply vote on the budget figure, and it's up to the school department and school committee to determine how funds are utilized. Having said that, I think it's important to highlight where our tax dollars would be going. I've been following the budget process, and it looks as though our budget would be going towards our school staff, many of whom live in town, who will be compensated for the invaluable services and supports provided each and every day. The budget allows elementary class sizes to stay within the optimal and mid-size ranges. Middle school classes will have an average of 24 students rather than 26 or more in a classroom. A growing multilingual population will have essential and necessary supports in place. High school students will once again have access to alternative education, which may be the difference between earning a high school diploma and dropping out. These are the things represented in this budget, and I firmly believe that a vote in favor of this budget signals our community's continued investment in public education. I want to thank the Town Council and the school committee for their work and thoughtful discussion during the budget workshop last month. The fact that folks were able to sit around a table, ask questions of one another, it seemed like it was a really productive use of everyone's time. It was collaborative, respectful, and at the end of that workshop, I felt more informed as a citizen when it comes to this budget. I also noticed and appreciated that there was a small shift in the conversation. Rather than solely focusing on decreasing or lowering the school budget, there was an acknowledgement that we may need to look at things a little bit differently. Our costs, like so many other communities, are not decreasing. I look forward to hearing more about the work that you all are doing with the Fiscal Sustainability Committee. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Ken Curtis, 118 South Street. Thank you for being here tonight. Not an easy job, I understand that. But it appears to my circle of taxpayers that I talk to around town, and I'll say this kindly, that the council is intimidated by the school committee. Said kindly. I know that some of the council members have served on the school committee, so I think they would have a deeper insight into the financial workings of the school committee. Talking about the workshop the other night with the school committee, I felt that when they asked for direction and which way the council was thinking, I felt that the council members should have been non-committal at that point. I think you encouraged the school committee. It also appears that all other departments are encouraged, kindly said, are encouraged to keep their increase in appropriations each year to around 3%. That's what I'm hearing. School committee doesn't have those constraints. So I would ask you to be aware and be focused and ask a lot of questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? All right, the public hearing is closed.
Proposed Order 2476, order that the following school budget items be adopted and approved for fiscal year 24-25. Order that the following school budget items be adopted and approved for fiscal year 2024-2025, that $23,003,214 be authorized to be expended for regular instruction, that $9,928,181 be authorized to be expended for special education, that $0 be authorized to be expended for career and technical education, that $1,104,249 be authorized to be expended for other instruction, that $4,366,133 be authorized to be expended for student and staff support, that $1,643,111 be authorized to be expended for school administration, that $2,721,489 be authorized to be expended for school administration, that $2,396,077 be authorized to be expended for transportation and buses, that $5,057,400 be authorized to be expended for facility maintenance, that $2,891,573 be authorized to be expended for debt service and other commitments, and that $0 be authorized to be expended for all other expenditures. Be it further ordered that $53,111,427 appropriated for the total cost of funding public education from kindergarten to grade 12 as described in the Essential Programs and the Service Funding Act, and that $15,259,541 be raised as the municipality's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from kindergarten to grade 12 as described in the Essential Programs and Service Funding Act, in accordance with the Maine Revised Statutes, Title 20A, Section 15688. That $1,795,917 be raised and appropriated for the annual payments on debt services previously approved by the municipality's legislative body for non-state funded school construction projects, non-state funded portions of school construction projects in addition to the funds appropriated at the local share of the municipality's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from kindergarten to grade 12. Be it further ordered that the school committee be authorized to expend $53,111,427 for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2024 and ending June 30th, 2025 from the municipality's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from kindergarten to grade 12 as described in the Essential Programs and Service Funding Act, non-state funded school construction projects, additional local funds for school purposes under the Maine Revised Statutes, Title 20A, Section 15690, unexpended balances, tuition receipts, state subsidy, and other receipts for the support of schools. Be it further ordered that the town will appropriate $364,374 for adult education and raise $177,936 as local share, with authorization to expend any additional, incidental, or miscellaneous receipts in the interest and for the well-being of the adult education program. Ordered that $11,266,236 be raised and appropriated in additional local funds which exceeds the state's essential programs and services allocation model by $11,266,236 as required to fund the budget recommended by the school committee. The school committee recommends $11,266,236 for additional local funds and gives the following reasons for exceeding the state's essential programs and services fund model by $11,266,236. The state's funding model does not support all of the costs of the schools because it includes only those costs considered essential by the new state essential programs and service EPS model. Be it further ordered that in the event that the SAU receives more state education subsidy than the amount included in this budget, the school board be authorized to use all or part of the additional state subsidy for the purposes of increasing expenditures associated with the provisions of the FAPE services to the 3- and 4-year-old students.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Gagnon. Is there a second? Second by Councillor Sims. All right, I'll open up discussion. No one has any comments?
Do you want comments?
It's up to you. If you have something additional to say, feel free.
I'll go first,
Okay,
I
go
guess.
ahead.
I'll break the ice. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the school board who are present and staff. I just want to say thank you for the hard work and due diligence you did this past year. Special note of thanks to Michelle Littlefield. We shared a discussion after the election, and she did what she said she was going to do. She took a fine-tooth comb over it and did the work she promised she'd do. So thank you to all that did it, and I appreciate it.
If you have something you'd like to add.
I just want to thank the school committee for doing a great job in putting together a budget that makes sense to me and supports our education and keeps our taxpayers in mind. Thank you.
Go ahead, Counselor Sims.
Yeah, sure. I support sending this school budget to our voters. I know we're all frustrated with the rate at which our property taxes have been rising these past few years, but I believe that investing in our schools is a critical priority. From what I've observed thus far in my time on the council, our school administrators are doing a responsible job, stretching each dollar as far as they can. I thank them for their efforts, and I also want to thank our teachers for supporting the next generation of our community. Our rising operating costs for both our school and our town budgets are symptoms of much greater problems that cannot be fixed overnight, but must be addressed by our council and our staff. We are starting down the right path with the newly formed Joint Fiscal Sustainability Committee, as well as our RFP for an economic development strategic plan. And I have a bunch of other comments, but I can save them for later. Just more kind of thoughts on, things we can do to improve moving forward
Okay,
from a town revenue perspective.
thank you. Counselor LeBoy?
Yeah, like the other counselors, I want to thank the school committee for putting together a budget that makes sense to all of us, and school staff, and anybody at home that's wondering why. There is a very detailed, documented list, timeline of how we arrived at this. And you can find that on the school website. And I urge you to check it out if you have concerns or questions, because if you really follow the process, you realize why we're at this number. So thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Doesn't feel as strong to just say ditto, but ditto. I'm very pleased with all the work that the school committee members did, and the joint workshop was really clear. And I do want to mention Hollis Cobb's presentation on the undesignated fund balance, which was very, very well done and informative. So thank you for that, and yeah, thank you for this difficult work and really clear explanations. And it really feels like we've it feels like it was worked together and worked on very, very hard. So just very appreciative for you all.
Thank you. So I would also like to thank the school department and the school committee for, I think, the joint effort that we did this year. I think it was a lot more productive than last year. But as I've said every year, and I think I even said it at the workshop, these increases aren't sustainable. That's why we have the Fiscal Sustainability Committee. And I think we're moving forward on that front. As most things, government is kind of slow. But I think that there's things the school committee can do looking forward, just when you're renegotiating contracts and things like that, just keep those things in mind. Because I don't think that we can do this, and then to add bond requests to this is just going to be a hard sell for the taxpayers. So I do agree that we have some work to do on our side to help fix some of the problems that we encounter together. So I think that's what we need to do moving forward. I'm not happy with the increase, but I'm going to support sending this to the voters and have them decide. So I guess we're ready to vote. All right, all those in favor?
6 years.
6 yeas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Public hearing number 2 on item 2024-5-18. Should I let you speak?
And walk up while you're talking. Time.
Proposed 2024-2025 fiscal year budget for the town of Gorham, administrative sponsor.
Oh, all right, everybody's leaving, so I'm going to open the public hearing on the town budget. If anyone wants to speak on the town budget, now is the time. I think they're just leaving. They don't really want to talk to us about our budget. All right. Oh, we have one taker. Yay.
I'll never turn down an opportunity for a hot mic. Kelly DeVoe, Gorham resident, Herrick Road. I wanted to address tonight some concerns that I've had, and I raised early last year with regard to allocations of funds. Last year, I had a concern that I made quite public that I thought $265,000 for lighting a baseball diamond was a luxury expense and not a necessity for our community. I said this as a mom of baseball players with a batting cage and a baseball diamond destroying my backyard and a missing window in my garage as proof. But I now know that lights are not a requirement for tournaments or more play. I know that the season is short, and if that Little League wanted to extend playing opportunities, they need only look at Saturday or Sunday games. I also know that our memories must be short, because as the town council approved this allocation last fall, while the embers of the firestorm about the school's budget was still burning. This approval of $250,000 was on the heels of watching the school committee work through the agonizing line-by-line effort to get a budget approved by a town that is saying that taxes are simply too much. And knowing that while the school and those pesky families with kids who keep moving here are being blamed, our tax dollars are really one pot of money that funds from both the municipal and the school budget are drawn. ARPA funds is free money if one chooses to look at federal money that way, but using it wisely to offset additional and necessary expenses that must be paid from that one pot of money seems the most prudent. To that end, the town manager went to the directors of his departments, the people we employ to be expert in their respective fields, and asked them how they would spend the money. A list of proposed projects was generated and included things like heart monitors for our ambulances, CPR devices, improved recording equipment, so that we can all be informed participants in our local governance, and a plan to fix or add benches around our community. There was a dog park, which was removed from the list, sadly, for $28,000 that would have benefited the over 2,500 dogs here in our community. I think that would have been a great service to the older citizens for whom dog walking is difficult, or the families who are used to playing fetch on the school fields that are no longer permitted. I don't even have a dog. I just thought it was a good idea. It just seems like a good idea, but nowhere on that list were lights for a baseball diamond. I was concerned that the initial $265,000 was overly generous and uninformed. $250,000 for 4 poles, some lights, and a flagpole. Didn't forget your flagpole, Mr. Pratt. It didn't rain last year for 48 of the 92 days last summer. That's a lot of money. This is a lot of money for a very short window of time for a very specific kind of field that can only be used for a very specific sport, by a specific age bracket, and typically by a specific gender. Do you know what $265,000 would have provided in that school budget? A fully staffed alternative education program at the high school. That would have been 2 teachers and 2 ed techs supporting the most at-risk kids in Gorham towards productive adulthood. Instead, the school department, in order to meet that critical need that was cut during a previous year's budget process, this year they cut the Chinese language program, a social studies teacher, and the position of an English teacher who happens to also be a resident in this community. They made the difficult choices to cut positions in order to scrape up the money for an alternative education program that you approved. And yet now we are asking for another $300,000 out of the one pot of money to address an infrastructure needed to even consider installing the lights. The town knew shortly after approving the allocation that it would not be enough, and have now additionally added time and labor of the Public Works Department, a facilities manager, and have had to hire an electrical engineer, is my understanding, to do a site infrastructure study. This is all over $500,000 that might get us the infrastructure needed. And when the council asked the director of Parks and Rec if this is where she would spend the additional $300,000 allocated to her department, she said no. The director said she would look at lighting the soccer field first, giving more citizens access for use of the property for multiple sports, multiple ages. And during the budget workshop in April, those present seemed to believe it was likely even more money would be needed to be allocated to complete the project. I commend the town for looking at this comprehensively and considering an infrastructure and long-range plan. I would also encourage you to consider a long-range funding plan to make this happen. I would advocate for reallocation of the $265,000 in ARPA funds to begin the work on the infrastructure needed to light the entire Little Falls complex and to gather the needed and missing information as to what it would take to fully light this area. I would encourage the town council to listen to the directors you employ as to the prioritization of this and other projects. There are currently $4,342,738 worth of projects that were requested by our town's directors on the last page of the budget that will go unfunded. 3 departments, our Rec, PD, and Fire Department, requested a storage garage for $300,000.
Kelly?
Almost done.
All right.
You have the same fiscal responsibility that you demanded of the school committee, and while I have great hope for the newly formed Fiscal Sustainability Committee to get us on a healthy path forward, this is not the time for pet projects and nice-to-haves.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Me again. My name is Nikki Hudson, live on Villagewood Circle. I'm here tonight to speak in support of the lights at Little Falls, which includes the additional lighting for the parking lot and the upgrades to the electrical systems. I support the additional funding for the lighting project for a number of reasons. The town council allocated federal funds for this project, which limits the costs but doesn't eliminate for taxpayers. I understand that the initial allocation was for $265,000 and the intention was for that money to cover the entirety of the project. I think we can all recognize that the best intentions don't always match our reality, especially when it comes to funding any sort of capital projects in towns or schools. The upgraded electrical system and added lights in the parking lot are simply a first step for the Little Falls recreational area. The improvements to Little Falls will also allow the town to host tournaments and rent fields to travel teams. These events bring many families to town who may financially support our local businesses and the snack shack on site. I won't pretend that the snack shack will earn enough to offset these larger projects, but I do think it will go a long way when it comes to maintaining these facilities and others around town. I recently spent a rainy Sunday over at the Westbrook Fields, and there were a whole lot of people that were willing to spend a couple of bucks on a hot chocolate. I came here tonight from a Little League game. I left my son catching behind the plate and my husband coaching in the dugout alongside his dad. My daughter was rolling down some hill, just in case you wanted to know where the whole family was, but that's not the point. If you asked me what my son's first love is, I wouldn't hesitate. It's baseball. From the moment he could walk up to a tee and take a swing, he fell in love. So each spring, we grab a new pair of white pants that will be covered in grass stains by the end of practice, and he plays as long as the season lasts. Each fall, he tries to be the first at fall ball practice, and there's no award or recognition for that, but he just wants to get a few extra minutes on the field. By the time the lights project is finished, he probably won't be playing Little League, but that's okay. There are plenty of other baseball players who will get the chance to play under the lights. I tell you all this because it's disheartening to hear that there's not enough kids who benefit. Little League is a truly unique moment in time. You only get so many years, and if we measure the worthiness of a project by the number of kids who are out there each year, the lights and further upgrades may never happen. Rather than framing this as a project that only benefits a small group of kids, I prefer to think of this as one example of our investment in recreational activities, our youth sports partnerships in town, and outdoor spaces for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Greg Norton. I'm the current president of Gorham Little League. We at GYBSA stand ready to be a partner to the town of Gorham. If Gorham's investing in this project, we're planning to make over $50,000 in improvements to fields as well as the town this year alone, simply to improve the children of Gorham's experience. Let me remind you, as a nonprofit, we have put tens of thousands of dollars into Gorham fields over the past few years. Fields that we do not have a lease on and our use can be taken away at any time. Despite that, we stand ready to pay higher usage fees if needed to help broker the usage of fields for travel baseball if asked, which would increase town revenue to offset the project. Whatever is needed to convince our town government to give our kids more access to a sport we love. We are bursting at the seams for access to fields, and as the town grows, it can be expected participation will grow past our already 500+ participants each year. I represent volunteers from GYBSA who spend hundreds of hours in support of these kids. We are a nonprofit in which 100% of our revenue goes back to the community. This day and age, it is incredibly difficult to compete for kids' attention with a myriad of unhealthy options, and we all know outdoor recreation is paramount to childhood development. If you let these kids play a game under the lights with their friends, you make memories for a lifetime and a pride in Gorham that cannot be monetized. I understand there are a million uses that are competing for dollars, but I can safely say there are not many uses that can double the usage of an existing field without taking up any more land while getting more kids outside and generate revenue all at the same time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Madam Chair, I just encourage anybody that does want to speak to maybe form a line. Just, it's a long walk over there, that's all.
Hi, hello, my name's Joel Shaw. I've lived in Gorham for about 18 years. This is the second time I think I've been in this room. I'm a member of the Gorham Little League Board. I did not expect that to be a political appointment. Clearly, I was wrong on that one. I didn't expect to stand up. I'm an attorney. I'm not here in any representative capacity, just to make that clear. But two things have got me sort of out of my chair here. One happened last night, and then just listening to some of the discussion so far today. Councillor Gagnon's son, Phil, plays on my team, my Little League team. Last night at practice, I heard 11-year-olds asking him about the Lights Project and what was going to happen. 11-year-olds. And talking to my wife later on last night, it occurred to both of us that this is the first exposure a lot of these kids have to democratic processes. It just is. This just isn't something that they run into in practice at a town local level. And when you compare that to what is going on in the world today at the federal level, sometimes the state level, I hate to say it, I'm a lawyer. I cringe sometimes when my son walks into a room and I'm watching a news channel and he's asking me questions. These decisions were made months ago, and I understand that in hindsight there were additional costs, which I also understand are not going to affect taxes. But the reality is when you make these decisions and we make promises to kids and then we step back several months later for issues that come up that don't affect our mill rate and say, sorry, just kidding. That is what these kids now think. That's their first exposure to local government. I don't want that to be it. I don't want to explain that to my son. Let's give them a better experience. I understand the competing I understand the competing priorities here, and there are clearly lots of them. But in this case, those priorities were there when this money was originally allocated, and they'll be there, and there'll be many of them, and most of them will be there next year. This is our chance to do what's right for a decision that we have already made. Let's just not show these kids when they first interact and they first have their first touch with local democratic processes that we're not as bad as what they see on TV. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Seeing no one, the public hearing is closed.
Proposed Order 2477, order that the Town Council vote to adopt the 2024-25 fiscal year budget with the following department totals. General Government, $2,985,898. Public Safety, $6,156,713. Public Works Solid Waste, $3,548,927. Health and Welfare and Social Service Agencies, $185,620. Recreation Community Center Cable, $812,565. Libraries and Museums, $614,131. Development, $270,197. Debt and interest, $1,734,950. Capital items, $1,018,500. Insurance and employee benefits, $4,535,181. Other town services and unclassified, $532,613, with a subtotal of $22,395,295. The Cumberland County property tax of $1,573,273, with a total of $23,968,568. Non-property tax revenues, $12,554,094. Be it further ordered that the education budget, as finally approved by the Gorham Town Council and subsequently approved by the voters of the Town of Gorham, be incorporated into the final municipal budget. And be it further ordered that the Town Council vote to adopt the capital budget Part 2 in the amount of $3,936,890 to be funded from the town's undesignated fund balance. And be it further ordered that all taxes on real estate and personal property shall be due and payable upon approval of this order, and that 1/2 of all real estate and personal property taxes that remain unpaid on November 15th, 2024 shall commence bearing interest on November 19th, 2024, and that the final 1/2 of all real estate and personal property taxes that remain unpaid on May 15th of 2025 shall commence in bearing interest on May 16th, 2025, at the interest rate of 8.5 per annum as authorized by Maine law until paid and collected, and the tax collector and treasurer are authorized to collect and receive thereof. And be it further ordered that the Gorham Town Council authorizes the finance director to accept prepayment of real and personal property taxes. And be it further ordered that pursuant to Title 36 MRSA, Section 506A, the Gorham Town Council establishes an interest rate of 4.5 per annum to be paid on all real estate and personal property taxes rebated due to overpayment of taxes. And be it further ordered that pursuant to Title 36 MRSA, Section 906, the Gorham Town Council hereby requires and direct that any tax payment received from an individual as payment for any property tax be applied against outstanding or delinquent taxes, due that property in chronological order beginning with the oldest unpaid tax bill, provided, however, that no such payment shall be applied for any tax or which an abatement application or appeal is pending, unless approved in writing by the taxpayer. This order shall remain in effect until rescinded by the municipal offices. Be it further ordered that in the event that the amount of interest on unpaid taxes is calculated to be less than $1 on the payment date, and that the payment instrument is for full amount of the unpaid tax, the finance director is authorized to waive imposition of interest.
Thank you, Lori. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Seconded by Councilor Wilder Cross. Before we get into discussion, I just want to ask the council to, before we go through this, individually go through the departments, but I'll ask each councilor if they want to bring up any amendments or changes, and then we will separately do capital part 2, because they're two different, to make it easier for Sharon and Ephraim. So we'll go, so if anybody wants to start, if anybody has any comments, questions?
I'll start.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll suck the air out of the room, I don't mind. So I don't have a lot of changes. I do have one question though for the town manager. So the flashing crosswalk lights that we put in town, what is the average cost for that? And I know you probably don't know that off the top of your head.
Thank you. We could do it like Price is Right. I'll look to the Public Works Director. You know, we're close. I think, and Terry can come up and correct me if I'm wrong, we're in the ballpark. I want to say they're like $16,000, $20,000 a pair, something like that.
$16,000 a pair is the average price. Yep.
We don't have, we've been paying for that with TIF money with village improvements, right?
The ones in the village were a combination of, I believe, I'm going off memory, TIF funds, PACS contributions, and the ones in the Little Falls Village were MPI/PACS as well.
Correct.
So a lot of them were, we leveraged grant funds to procure them.
Okay, don't go anywhere, Terry.
I'll stay
Quick
right
question.
here.
So 202.25, so Main Street, 202. Do we have any plans for a crosswalk or flashing lights there? And the reason I ask is a 12-year-old girl got hit there the other night and could have been really, really injured. So I just want to find out if there's room in the budget for said lights or if it's already planned, basically.
I don't believe we have any specific plans there.
Okay.
On that intersection, we did put a set of those flashing lights that cross Main Street at Johnson Road.
Right.
The Gray Road intersections are kind of a whole different animal. I know we're looking at kind of a reconstruction there some long term, but we can certainly consider putting there. There's room to put them there. The width of that intersection makes it very difficult for people to cross it and for those signs to be that effective.
Yeah. No, I know it's a complicated intersection right there. I feel like anything we can do right there to try and slow people down. My understanding is she was waved across the intersection basically by somebody in the car turning, didn't see her. So.
And it's something, if the council wants to look at some options there, there's certainly, a lot of pedestrian safety options we could look at there, and just, depends on what you want to invest in that type of infrastructure.
So, okay, yeah.
You can add an island there to shorten the walk too.
Right, I mean, I'm not ready to just, obviously without a quote or anything, I'm not ready to throw money at it, but I would, I guess, as part of this budget meeting, just say, if we can somehow fund this mechanism to slow that intersection down and maybe make it a little more pedestrian friendly, I'd be okay with that. So I'm not gonna make an amendment, I'm not gonna say anything else, I'm good with this. It's more just, I would like Public Works and Town Manager to talk about it and see if they can come up with something funding-wise off of this budget.
Yep, and I don't disagree with Councilor Gagnon, but when we go to put an island or anything in the middle of that intersection, it has to really be engineered by a traffic engineer so we get it right. We're talking about pedestrian safety, and there may be some other infrastructure required because it's a safe haven, a pedestrian safe haven. There may be some signage. So again, it's a little bit of a tough intersection, but we'll look into some options and come back with some kind of an estimate.
I have a microphone tonight, I might as well use it for something good, right? So other than that, that's the only thing I wanted to talk about.
Okay. Councilor Sims, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd certainly support some investigation of, traffic safety in that area. And I just mentioned that I think we learned that the State Department of Transportation will pay for some of those signs, if I have it accurate.
Not those signs.
Not those signs, different signs.
I think we were talking about bicycle signs.
Okay, so just the bicycle signs.
They rarely, we have to pry it out of them, but we get the money out of them one way or another.
Got it.
But it's, I would echo Terry's comments that if it was an easy solution and we could have just plopped the flashers in already, we would have. But it's just the angle of the intersection, the right of way. But it's something that we are more than happy to look at and see what short-term and then long-term solutions we can come up with.
Thank you.
Just while we're on this topic, does that count as part of, can the village TIF be used for there?
Absolutely, that's in the village. I think, I know there's no amendment being offered, but we don't have a price tag. So if there's a small solution within our current operating budget that we can fund, we're happy to do that and take a crack at it. A major overhaul of that intersection could cost $500,000, $1 million. Yeah. So that's long-term, obviously.
Yeah, I was just wondering where the lines are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, didn't mean to open up a can of worms, sorry.
You just went right to it.
I did, I went right at it.
Does anybody have any other, for the departments, just, before we get to capital part 2, I guess, anybody have any changes for the departments? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
thank you, Chair. Page 45, there was an error during the workshop. I assume it's been updated. Can you explain what shifted here? Well, no dollars shifted is my understanding, but how it lined up, yeah.
Yes, and I think I know what you're referring to. Essentially, one of the lines describing the fire ponds, the street lights, shifted in the Excel spreadsheet. So it looked like one item wasn't being funded and one was. So now it's been corrected. It brings up a good point. The final council-approved budget item or budget we will publish on the website. The council had some other You're looking for some more material from fire rescue, some other typos that we found. That'll all be corrected and/or added to and then published with the final document. So the supplemental materials and information, I think bond, a list of the bonds and so on and so forth. We'll add that and then publish that when the whole process is completed.
Thank you.
Mr. Gagnon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think last year I asked for $1,000 for the food bank. I think they emailed and said they appreciated from the contribution as food insecurity increases due to inflation. I think I saw something that came out that said Maine is 6th in the nation for the cost of food. Is that still in the budget? I couldn't find it.
Yes, thank you. Page 30 of your packet, $1,000 is funded.
Okay.
For the Gorham Food Pantry.
I just couldn't find it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other?
Chair?
Yep.
Thank you. We talked about during the workshop the part-time role at the library, one of the few positions that was cut in 2020 and hasn't been put back yet. Would putting that in, would that have an impact on the mill rate?
Thank you. The question is, I guess the answer is maybe. If it did, it would be like a penny. It's just hard to project at this point. So that total expenditure for that part-time position would be, and that the library requested, that was not funded in this budget, was $21,844.90. Like I said, it may or may not impact the mill rate. I'm leaning towards probably not. If the council wishes to add it, and you want to guarantee that it does not impact the mill rate, you could allocate the same amount of TIF funding, and I could offset a TIF program elsewhere that would eat up some tax dollars and make up the difference, if that makes sense.
So I'd like to make a motion for an amendment to do such a thing, to add this part-time position at the library and allocate an equal amount of TIF funds to offset it so it doesn't impact the mill rate. I'd like to offer that as an amendment here.
Is there a second? Second by Councilor Sims. Any discussion on the amendment?
I just, can I go
Yeah,
ahead?
go ahead.
I just say that I think that's the library staff got up and discussed it at the budget workshop. It'll enable the existing administrators to be able to develop more programming and deliver more to the residents of Gorham, so the whole community can benefit from that. And I see that as a sensible use of a couple extra pennies of our tax bills.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I support it.
Right. All those in favor of the amendment to add the part-time position? 4 yeas. All those opposed? 3 noes. Pratt, Phillips, and Gagnon.
Sorry, Chair.
Yep.
Just to add the part-time position and do the TIF offsetting.
Yes, I mean, that's what we had written down. I just wanted to make sure people knew what we were voting on.
Excellent.
All right. Any other?
How much was that for?
How much was it for?
$21,844.90.
All right. Any other?
One more for me here. I am very glad that we are getting a full-time, basically, mental health call person for the police department using opioid funds. And I also just want to make sure that as we receive those funds over time, that all of that money is being used to just help those who need it, like specifically around opioids. And there are many towns that are going willy-nilly with that money and spending it on whatever. So I just want to say, like, let's just, make sure, no amendment here, but definitely make sure that it's being used to help the people most impacted. So, that's all.
you. All right, if we're all set with the department part of the budget, we can move on to capital part 2. That makes sense. Does anyone have any questions, comments? No?
Anybody?
Okay. No questions or changes or anything?
I'll kick us off here, starting with a question of the town manager.
Okay.
The last page, capital items requested and not funded, is this in any particular order?
Thank you, no. It is not in any particular order. Departments do submit a priority ranking to me of their, I guess, needs. Obviously, you know, in some years, they may have 1 or 2 items that are very expensive that are priority needs that we just can't fund. So I'll go down the list and then look at logistically, how do we make it all fit? So what you see before you is just more or less just group by department. That doesn't necessarily mean the one on the top is #1 priority, although if you just picked up Public Works, I know that the sands salt building is a priority. So in that case, that works out, but not necessarily for all of them.
So I will be the one to start the discussion. Looking at the list of capital projects, I'm okay with spending $265 for, you know, Little League lights. I approve that. My concern is just that this number has continued to kind of balloon as we've learned more, and it scares me because looking at the list of like not funded capital items that are things that we need, spending what sounds like $500,000 to $700,000 just on one sport for one age group it's a bit of a luxury that we don't have right now, and I'm still okay with the 265 if we can make sure that gets to the fields or doing improvement like that, using those funds for something there. But just my concern is one part that this is a lot of money, and the other part is that it feels a little like we're circumventing the voters, honestly, because we are using federal money and it's going to be probably coming in right under that 500,000 because we're using that federal money. So it's technically not going to the voters, but this feels like it should because of how much we're spending. So I want to start the discussion there.
Are you making an amendment to remove the 300,000 from the?
I want to talk about it a little bit, understand where other people are coming from here
Okay.
before making any specific amendments, if that's okay.
Yep, that's fine. I guess I said this at the workshop. This is a project that we started working on a long time ago. And I know we keep starting projects. We do master plans and then they don't get fixed and finished. We just did Roby Park master plan. So for me, if we can move any of our master plans forward, I know we've changed the Chick property master plan because now we put schools on it. I'm fine with spending this money for the improvements, but I want it, and I'm not really specifically saying what they're for. I just think that the next steps at Little Falls Recreational Area, that's what this money should be used for. So if the 265 is used for, I don't know, some of the electrical work, or just to get the electrical, to get it set up, that someday we have lights. Maybe it does parking lights, and then this additional 300,000 would do another piece of the project. I guess that's where I'm coming from in terms of finishing a project. We have a lot of things that are, not done, and if we were to pivot and maybe say, start looking at Roby Park and start doing things there, I would hate to just do a little bit there and then go back and do something else. So I'm kind of looking at this as the next step for Little Falls Rec Area versus actual lights or actual, I think there's steps that need to be taken into the town manager's reports that he's been giving us about the money and what needs to be done before we can have parking lights and things like that. I think I want it to get us to a point where we can have lights for baseball, soccer, the parking lot and everything. So any steps that go towards that, I'm in favor of, so. Would you like to go ahead?
Sure.
Okay. Then you can go,
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we're a town of 1,000 projects that never get completed, in my opinion. One piece that I guess wasn't said was the other part of the ARPA funds that went to Roby Park for $250,000. No one mentions that, and the fact that there's a huge price tag behind that one as well. Do we expect that one to be finished altogether? Nope, we don't. The problem is we have electrical currents currently that go to nothing. We have electrical currents now that go down to Shaw Park for, I don't know for what technically at this point. I think this is a phase project, and that's how I'm looking at it now, is this is a phase. And so we would get lights and field lights, and those lights could be used for other programs in the winter as well. Soccer can use those backfields as well. It's not just a single-use property. We do it with Roby. We do it with the softball diamond. So the way I'm looking at it is, yeah, we're getting not only three-phase power in so that we can expand the lights for a future project, hopefully for the soccer fields at a later time, but it's also for parking as well, where at dusk, as well as the good event for the food trucks, that goes well past dark. And so really we're getting a lot of bang for our dollar on it. And to be honest, it was well engineered by the engineer. I'm supportive of it still. He came to me and said, hey, we need three-phase power. Makes sense to me. It's not there currently. I think we've tried in the past to have lights there in the budgets. You know, if we're going to do a project, let's finish it and move forward. Councillor Sims and I also sat through several economic survey applicants, and the resounding theme was very simple. It was attractions such as, and the predominant one was trails. The second one was activity-based events such as sports, right, to have tournaments in play. The part, or the kicker they said, is economic development isn't just having them. It's having the people retained to use the restaurants and the other services, but hopefully also the development of hotels and other pieces that would create the economic development and the reduction in taxes that we're looking to build towards. So they're coming with that, and they're saying the same thing. We're well-positioned, well-placed. I have a degree in economics. It wasn't a surprise to me when they said it. So it's either we're looking to build and looking to complete projects to push the town forward, or it's miring it down in infrastructure that goes to nowhere, where we never actually finish something. And I can list off the names of it, and I don't want to, and I don't feel I need to. But I've been here long enough to say I believe in it, and I believe that it's something that's going to attract people. And that's what we're looking to do, particularly in that area. We did ask about that area, and I won't give any surprises, but the Wyndham study identified that area as well. So.
You can go ahead, Jenny.
No, I have a question, and it has to do with the bottom line here, because we've had reports about how much money it would cost to complete the project. Mm-hmm. And as I understand it, this doesn't cover it. And so I think, first of all, we have to get the extra power in there. I support that 100%, and we've got to do it. If we can't do the whole job, and I sympathize with what you're saying, we got to finish the job. I'm not sure that this is the year that we should be putting that $300,000 into a job that we're not even close to finishing it. I would rather see the money go toward the Roby Park just to move that one forward. And I guess you and I are going to we're going to agree to disagree, I think, about this.
No,
But-
I think it's the same thing, to be honest. It's an unfinished project that we're allocating ARPA funds to. It's the same principle.
If this would cover the whole cost of doing what your dream would be, I'd say, yeah, let's do it. Let's get it finished. But this doesn't even come close.
Counselor Sims?
Yeah, I've definitely, this one's been a challenging one for me, my first budget season here. You know, I want to use the taxpayer money responsibly. I support youth sports. If I had millions of dollars, I would buy these lights for these kids in a heartbeat. I would do that. But I don't have millions of dollars. We've got millions of dollars of, you know, street repairs that aren't getting funded. That said, you know, I think that I would just like a little bit of clarification, because I feel like we've, you know, obviously people in the public have, you know, they're passionate. I mean, the 20,000 that we just approved of TIF, whether it's TIF or property tax increase on the mill rate for the library position, that was taxpayer money that we just spent. That, you know, I think sometimes the TIF thing can get a little misleading, and that's not particularly helpful. So I'd just like to clarify, you know, the 300,000 that's in this line item, this is Gorham taxpayer money that we are investing. So there's that. You know, I think I think to Ginny's point, the core infrastructure, investing in the whole area, I think that's reasonable. I think that, you know, I'd like to see, you know, I think some of the other sports teams might, you know, be questioning why they didn't get any ARPA funds, perhaps. But, you know, the way I kind of tried to suggest we can kind of try to come to some sort of, you know, amicable way forward here is to have the Little League folks find a way to bring some more cash to the table. It doesn't have to be right up front. It can be over time. You know, the town has the ability to front that sort of capital. The Little League person that spoke up, that they indicated a willingness to do that. So I do think it's fair to ask the Little League specifically to pay a larger annual fee to the town if they're going to get ball field lights that other people aren't getting. And you know, we're not going to be able to hash out the details of that here at this table, but that's something I'd like to encourage the town staff to work with the Little League to do, and I would just like to try to encourage whatever we can do to, you know, make the relationship between these private sports organizations and the town as constructive, and, you know, as opposed to each entity trying to like, you know, get some support before everybody else, trying to have a collaborative group. You know, we all want to invest in Little Falls. I think that's a great idea. So let's get all the people together. Let's get all those sports groups together, and let's you know, find a way to get some private support for this, and get some more fundraising in to get lights on more of those fields sooner than later. So that's where I stand on this one. It's been an interesting one.
Thank you. Counselor Pratt, go ahead.
I love this conversation. This is great,
Yeah.
seriously. Thanks, everybody. So for me, I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't have a kid playing Little League. I don't have kids playing soccer. Barely ever go eat at the food trucks, even though I hear they're great. Just don't make it out there because I'm busy. For me, though, looking at this project is I would like to see the infrastructure go in. I'm a boots and suspenders person. Everybody knows that, right? So I want to see the infrastructure get in. I want to see the wiring and the transformer pads go from 202 to where they need to go to get all the lights in, basically. If there's money left over after that, fine, we'll put some lights up. If there isn't, we've got the infrastructure in at that point. Maybe next year on Capital Part 2, some lights go in. But for me, I feel like this is a good use of money to start doing the infrastructure on this project. Because again, since I've been on the council, 6 years, it feels like we take projects and we're just throwing darts at the wall, just trying to say, okay, we're going to do this project, we're going to do this one. I want to see something come across the finish line at some point, that's all. And I know we have brought some things to fruition, but for me, without the infrastructure put in place to start with, this project's just going to fail from the beginning. So I would like to see nothing but infrastructure with this money, and if there's money enough to put parking lot lights up or ball field lights, if they're the closest to the beginning of it, great. If we don't have the money to do it, we're where we're at, the infrastructure's in, and we can work our way out from there year by year, but at least we can come up with a plan that we have something adequate to actually power these lights with. Right now, we're going to be running extension cords and generators if we try to put lights in. I mean, it's just the cold, hard truth of this.
Yep.
We're going to blow the transformer off the pole, basically, if we try to do something right now. So let's do this smart, let's do this calculated, and let's do this right instead of just, let's do something. I want to do something right here. Let's get the infrastructure in. This is enough money to get good infrastructure in. From there, we'll worry about the lights after, as far as I'm concerned. That's my take. That's the way I'm voting tonight. We're going to have to rephrase the way this is worded, because basically, again, if it goes that way, then it's infrastructure. It's not definitive at that point. So sorry for my rant.
It's fine, thank you.
So,
Boy?
I just wanted to ask you a question. So you're saying the whole $565,000, and then if there's anything left from that, it would go
It would start,
for the
right,
parking lot, or?
say beginning to end, basically, with lighting would be my.
Because this isn't going to cover.
No, it's not going to.
even
It's not
close.
even going to scratch the surface of the lights. No, not at all.
Okay, thanks.
Especially if we do fancy dancing, networked lights, like it's the cool new thing. So I was thinking the old school ones where you flip the knife handle and the lights turn on, but apparently we're better than that in this town. So,
Yeah.
All right, Councilor LaVoy, go ahead.
I was going to go for the cheap ones.
So last year, I was the only nay vote to allocate ARPA funds for this project. And my reasoning at that time was, who does it benefit with regards to the total population of this town? 6 of you disagreed with me, and it went towards Little Falls. So fast forward, we're to this town budget, and we got $300,000 to add to that ARPA funding. So what's been done has been done. We can try to reverse that. I understand that. So I have a hard time with this one. And for those of you who think I might be against Little League, I was just outside an hour and a half ago tossing the ball with my son, who will probably be playing Little League because he loves it so much, okay? So I'm not against Little League or lights at Little Falls. I want to light up every single ball field we have in this town. But that's not why we're up here. We're up here to determine the best use of our taxpayer dollars for the vast majority. That said, to Lee's point, I would love to see a project completed. So we're at this point, and I think as much as I hate to support this, I don't hate to support this, I just think it should go someplace else. But it's in the budget. At this time, I say we get the infrastructure in, because I'm big on infrastructure too. That is the hardest part of the vast majority of projects, is getting that infrastructure in, where it opens up so many opportunities with regards to funding, jobs, and how work gets done, and who does the work. So that's where I'm at. That's just my comment.
Chair. So from what I'm hearing from everybody is this what's in the budget here is for Little Falls ball field and parking lights, but it sounds like we were talking about putting in the infrastructure for building out all of the lighting for Little Falls. So my concern, and I believe this is a question to the town manager, what we're talking about will be, even with the ARPA money, will be over 500,000. But we're talking about phases. I mean, is that just a loophole around bringing this to the voters? It sounds like what we're talking about will be spending over 500,000 on one project. So will this have to go to the voters?
Thank you. So with ARPA funding is treated, it's a federal grant. I mean, it's tax dollars, but it's federal money. So under the provisions of the charter, if grant money or other funding sources other than municipal tax dollars come into play, or other than TIF dollars, the charter cap of 500 and change applies. So when you add them together, even if they're over $500,000, that does not trigger the charter provision. What triggers the charter provision is one project over 500 and change, whatever that exact number is now with inflation. If a future phase was immediate, and I say immediate, like the next fiscal year, $500,000, the argument could be made that maybe that should go to the voters. Typically, though, what we see is phases are spread out. So like even if you look at the construction of Little Falls, it happened over many years because funding's at a premium. I think that's where it passes the straight face test, that it just is spread out. But if I labeled them differently in the budget and pulled them all for the same resource, absolutely that has to go to the voters. But in this specific case, I think it passes the straight face test as far as the charter goes, if that answers your question.
I would agree, because every project in every master plan, every project that we put forward or created, we would have to send to the voters before we spent the money on it. But we never spend the $4 million, on the whole project at once. And I think that's how, I think it's when we have the money, because most everything would be, like Roby Park, we've had that discussion. To finish, Roby Park would be a lot. So if we were to do a playground, depending on the price of that, that would be one part of the project, and then years or whenever we do other parts. So I think that that's a fair explanation from the town manager. I guess I have a question for you, town manager. I know we're talking about two different things now, I think. So you're saying the ARPA funds were set aside for lights when we had the discussion, the installation of lights, and then this additional amount you're saying is needed for the infrastructure, correct?
Yes, thank you. So the number, it was a pool of money that was left, I think, in the ARPA funding. So there was about that much money left. It was roughly, at the time, based on prior estimates. Obviously, those estimates went up. There was a need for three-phase power. Because that field was not originally permitted for lights, it had to go to the planning board. The planning board had the condition of parking lights, so obviously the cost went up. I guess getting back to the infrastructure question, I put this in here because to complete the project that was allocated, there was not enough funding. It is still potentially on the very low end of our latest estimate that maybe the infrastructure, the parking lights, and the field could be completed. It would be on the low end of that estimate. But that being said, I kind of view it as all the same package, because in order to get the ball field, you have to have the infrastructure. Right. Now you have to have the lights, have to be installed, and then obviously the lights in the ball field. So from why I put it in the budget, I look at it as one item.
So, okay, so we're leaving it as an item for infrastructure, parking lights required by the planning board, and then the ball field lights, correct? Those are the three parts?
Correct, in that order, because you need the infrastructure, to the three-phase and the transformers and the upgraded power. The lights for the parking and the conditions of the planning board have to be met before we can light the field. So they would go in that order, yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair. So it just sounds like the order of funds, if he needed TIF funds, he would just come to us and say, I need to release the TIF funds for it. So I leave it up to the town manager for pulling out he's done it for other projects too. If that's the council's wishes, to put the electrical in first and then go to lights and lights. I think he's heard what we want. So I'm good with you know.
Okay, he just had a question for us.
Yeah, absolutely on the same page. I just want to clarify, I cannot use TIF funding for this project. We tried to TIF Little Falls.
Oh, that's right.
The attorney said, no, you can't do that. I wish it could, because I think it would allow a lot more flexibility.
We don't want to use the other ARPA funds either. We want to keep those where they are.
Yeah.
You know, nobody wants to go after the poor Shaw Park ARPA funds, right? Because we could.
So, we don't, I just want to make sure. So what Counselor Pratt had said is pretty much what's going to happen anyways. His concerns about the infrastructure and completing that first, and then if there's any money left, or if there's not enough money left, so.
Thank you. So I can run this out for you. So council approves the budget as proposed this evening. We would go forward. We would revise, our engineering works. So we'd come up with a formal RFP process, go out to bid. We would come back and we'd say, okay, to get us to point A, meaning the minimum for the ball field lights, it's going to cost this much money. What can we get for that? We cannot obviously commit. If that number came in $100,000 more than what we have, we can't commit to it. But we would keep the council in the loop and say, the money will go this far, and I'd report back to you. And as long as I don't get a different direction at a later point, we would take the money as far as it goes. Now, obviously, we're not going to light half a field or something like that, but that's how we would move forward if this budget is approved this evening.
Yeah, just another clarifying question there, that process, and the funds that would be spent first would be the ARPA funds, like on the engineering and stuff. We can spend the ARPA money on that.
Thank you. I don't know if it would, probably, they need to be
right.
committed via a contract by the end of this calendar year. So the likelihood is, yes, the ARPA money would be spent first.
Thank you.
Chair, my concern with this project is I think it is it's an admirable project, but it feels like, buying a PlayStation 5 when we have bills to pay. Like, if we're being responsible financial stewards of the town, there are things that are much more in the need to have category than the want to have. And looking at this whole list on the back, I'm looking at a street sweeper, like a trackless machine, a chipper, fire suppression system for the fuel depot. Like, these are more important projects than lighting the fields. Honestly, I think it's a good idea if we didn't have all these things. If we didn't have, what are we going to do about this 4.4 million in unfunded road projects? Like, that's 4.4 million that we're just saying, oh well, and then next year it grows again. Are we never going to fix these things over time? And we're going to sink. We're talking about the quote that we were given now, right? Inflation is going to take it higher, but the quote that the council was given for lighting the entire area was $2 million. $2 million is a lot of money to spend on a nice to have. I would also ask the chair if it were okay if the director of Parks and Rec came up and gave her perspective on this, because I think her perspective is
I think that we've
very
already
important.
heard her perspective at the workshop, so I don't think that's necessary. I can ask the town manager if you want to.
Thank you. My preference, but it's up to the council, would be if you have specific questions for me and or the director, we can answer them, the specific questions.
Okay.
But I do caution my department heads against providing a more of a philosophy than answering specific questions.
I guess my question, because this has come up, of renting it and utilizing it, when we're talking about the Little League field, will this, for the Little League field, will it be utilized, these lights, will it be utilized by more than just the Little League Association?
Thank you. I think I can answer this. I think it would be, it's a very specific field for a very specific sport, excuse me. If other opportunities for that sport arose, potentially, but it's, again, very specific to a very specific sport. I don't see soccer playing there, if that's the question. I think it would, obviously, the game of baseball would be played there.
I think that the parking lot lights, just to that point, would light up for when people are ice skating and things like that. So I think we could, as part of this project, so. Any other questions, comments? Does anyone want to make any changes, amendments?
No, I think as long as the infrastructure has been driven home, then and the town manager is comfortable with it, I'm good with it.
I think we should amend it to state what we're looking for. My concern is when things aren't written down and we just say, yeah, that's what we want, and then what happens, so.
Madam Chair, I believe everybody's been heard.
Yep,
I
I'm
don't
going to ask the
want
town manager.
monopolization.
I'm going to ask the town manager if this needs to be changed.
Thank you. Not a comment on whether the council approves it or not. If I think given the interest in this project, we'll go out to a formal RFP if it is approved this evening and get firm, specific numbers. And just again, given the interest, I will bring it back to the council for direction.
Okay.
It will not be something that I or the department heads will be making the decision on as far as how we get across the finish line. Because I think there's going to be various stages of the finish line that I think the council should weigh in on.
Questions or comments, Capital Part 2?
I'd like to make an amendment to remove this item from Capital Part 2. I think it is, the numbers are vague. It is very unclear how much this might cost. It's very unclear what the long-term benefit is, and it seems like it's going to be long-term money.
Is there a second for the amendment to remove the item? All right, seeing none, the amendment fails.
Okay.
I do have one question on something else in Capital Part 2, just the recreational facilities master planning. Because we're doing the open space plan, I just wanted to know the difference.
We love plans.
Okay, well, I just want to know the difference, because I thought the open space plan was doing trails, and so I should have asked at the workshop.
Thank you. I think this was recommended by staff, not just from the rec department, but the community development department before, to make sure we cover everything before we jump into the comprehensive plan. So the comprehensive plan likely will be budgeted next year for implementation the following year, over probably 2 years. So they kind of identified this as an area that needs to be updated before we tackle that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I just thought they were the same thing. All right, that was my only question. All right. Nothing else? All right. All those in favor?
Of the budget?
Yep, of the budget. That's what we're talking about.
The budget.
All right. 6 days, all those opposed? Are you opposed?
Yeah. I'm just not quite comfortable with where we got, but.
Okay, are you in favor or opposed?
I'm opposed, so
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it still passes. Yeah.
Yes, but, yeah, all right, so 1 nay, Sims. Okay, all right. And that's it. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Everybody at once, all right.
What was the address?
Whoever you.